Welcome to Bit Distracted Games. My name is Nick, and I'll continue guiding you on your FlatRedBall game development journey. Last video, we discussed tile maps and collisions, allowing our player to physically interact with the world around them. In this video, we'll be covering how to add tile sets to your project. Tile sets can be used to add visuals to your game, including ground, sky, and other decorations. Sometimes tile sets are used for gameplay, like the tile set we used to paint our collision in the previous video. Other times, tile sets are used for visuals. These are tile sets which do not have any impact on the gameplay, but which can be used to improve the appearance of your game. Without visual tile sets, your game would just have these orange bricks and would not be appealing to your players. Every tile set requires a PNG file. Note that it's best to keep all of your visuals in a single PNG because this can make your game run faster. Also, if you're using your own sprite sheet, make sure that the PNG is saved relative to your project's content folder. We'll be using a PNG file that FlatRedBall provides, so you don't need to worry about finding one. Let's open our content folder in the File Explorer. If you don't know where the content folder is located, go to the FRB engine, and you can click on the folder icon here. Then go to Content, Entities, then Player. Here you will find the FRBeefcake sprite sheet PNG file. If you open it, you can see our own player we have been using. Now, full game may also include art for entities such as coins, blocks, or enemies. If we were using our own sprite sheet with all of these animations, then in this case, you may want to directly add said PNG to your FlatRedBall project. If you were only using a PNG just for tile sets, then you wouldn't need to add the file to the FRB editor because it will be automatically added to the project once it's referenced by your map. However, for this tutorial, we'll only be using the provided file. If you're still confused about when you need to add a PNG to your project, don't worry. 1. We'll cover how to do this in a future video. 2. You have our active FRB Discord server you can join to ask questions about this topic. Getting back on track, let's go back to our content folder. Now open Standard Tilesets icons. If you recognize these are our current gameplay tiles. Notice that we do use a separate file for our prettier visuals than our more functional gameplay tiles. This is common as we don't want to mix the visual and gameplay tiles together. Now that we are aware of what files we are using for each purpose, let's use the FRBeefcake sprite sheet I talked about earlier to create our first tile set. First, let's go back to Tiled. Next, click on this little button at the bottom right of the window to add a new tiled set in Tiled. On the pop-out window, let's name this tile set Art. For the source file, we want to select the provided FRBeefcake file. We also want to make sure that our tiles are 16 wide by 16 tall. This is the most common size for games, and this is the size of all the tiles in the PNG we will be using. Let's click Save As, and then select the location of where you want the tile set to be stored. I'm going to select the content folder as my save location. Once you hit Save, you should see the art from that file in its own tile set. Let's go back over to the other tab. Looking at the tile sets, now we have our art tile set alongside the standard tile icons. Before we start messing around with adding our fancier art tiles to our game, it's highly important to note that you cannot mix tile sets on a single layer. That means we only have one tile set for our gameplay layer, which is the tile icons tile set. We should never paint tiles from our visual tile set, in this case art, onto our gameplay layer. Instead, we're going to add a new layer. First, click on the new layer button under the layers list box in Tiled. Enter a name for this layer. Let's call it Ground Visuals. Now that we've created our ground visuals layer, make sure it's selected. Once selected, select a ground tile from the visuals tile set. We can start to paint ground tiles on the map. Remember, the visuals that we paint have no impact on the gameplay, but in most cases, they should line up with the gameplay layer. By doing this, it will make it look like our player is walking on the ground and bumping into walls. Now that we painted some tiles, let's save this tile map, run the game, and see it in action. That's looking better than just the orange tiles alone. Now, if you want to paint more tiles, go for it. It's your game, so feel free to explore and have fun with it. Just note, for a real game, you want to make sure to cover all collision tiles with visuals. The gameplay layer is useful for creating collision rectangles, and it's also good for debugging problems. But in a real game, you want to turn off this layer so that players see only the visuals. To turn off the layer's visibility, click on the eye icon. The layer disappears in tiled. Now save the map again and run the game. The gameplay layer will be invisible, but it will still create solid collisions. Now, games usually have more than one layer of visuals. Let's close this out and head back to tiled. We can add a sky background to our game by adding a new layer called Sky Layer. This layer is simple. It contains just a blue tile. As a shortcut, we can use the Fill tool by clicking on the Fill icon or by pressing the F key. Now select your tile and paint the sky. Remember, the order of layers in tiled affects the order of layers in our game. We want to make sure that the gameplay layer sits in front of the sky so that our player appears in front of the sky. That being said, let's drag the sky layer below the gameplay layer. Once again, time to test our game. And our game works so far. Layers can also be used to stack tiles on top of each other. Our visual tile set has tiles for clouds. We can create a new layer called Cloud Layer to hold the clouds. Let's create our cloud layer, making sure it's above the sky layer, but below the gameplay layer. Also, make sure this layer is selected. We are using the stamp tool and begin painting the clouds. These clouds appear in front of the sky layer, but appear behind the player. This layer can create a sense of depth, but we can make the clouds feel further away by adding Parallax. Parallax can be used to make layers move along the camera when the camera moves throughout a level. This is similar to how objects seem to move along with you when they are far away. For example, when looking out of the window in a car, you may notice that objects which are closer zoom by quickly, while objects far away, such as the mountains or moon, seem to follow the car as it drives along. To add parallax, select the cloud layer and change the parallax factor to value less than 1. Let's try 0.3 for both x and y values. 0.3 for x, 0.3 for y. Our map might look a bit funky now, but save the map and let's run the game anyways. Now, as we move around, the clouds seem to follow us, creating a sense of depth. Feel free to try adding more layers and multiple parallax factors. The closer to 0, the further away the layer appears. The closer to 1, the closer the layer seems. In fact, you can even create layers that are in front of the player with parallax value greater than 1. One last thing. If your game looks like mine, where there is unwanted blank space in the game and art is overlapping outside of your map, I challenge you to take the time to figure out how you may fix that using Tiled. If you need help, as always, reach out in the FlatRedBall Discord server. A link is in the description. If you are still struggling, I'll share a video with you on how you can solve this issue next. I am Nick with Bit Distracted Games, and once again, thank you for watching.